Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The top story we are tracking this evening. India-Turkey relations have come under severe strain lately after Turkish drones were used by Pakistan against India post-Operation Sindoor. Now, there are calls for reducing business and diplomatic ties. But what is the current state of relations? Total trade between India and Turkey was roughly $10 billion in FY24, with India exporting $6.65 billion worth of goods and India importing $3.78 billion worth of goods from Turkey. Now, Turkey accounts for just 1.5% of India's total exports. The FDI inflows from Turkey were $227 million in the last 25 years. Indian companies have invested $151 million in Turkey in the last 25 years or so. There are 150 Indian companies registered in Turkey, including Polyplex, GMR, Tata Motors, M&M, Reliance, Aditya Birla Group, Wipro, Dabur. Among the major Turkey companies in India are Limac Construction, Furnaz, Sarar, Soktas, Hydromas. Celebi had rights to provide ground services in Mumbai for 10 years and has now been denied security access. In light of Indo-Pakistan tensions, Indian exports to Turkey include cotton, organic dyes, chemicals, denim, steel, antibiotics, mobile handsets, clothing. Indian imports include auto components, marble, textile machinery, handlooms, denim, carpets, cumin seeds, minerals and steel products as well. India also imported 160,000 tons of apples from Turkey in 2024. There are 3,000 Indians in Turkey. At least 1,850 of them are working across commercial organizations, banks, IT firms, universities. There are also 400 Indian students in Turkey. India has also extended a helping hand to Turkey in times of crisis, most recently during the 2023 earthquake when India launched Operation Dost to help people there. India had set up a field hospital, airlifted 250 personnel to Turkey, and we used 6 C-17 military aircraft to transport relief and rescue equipment. This is also not the first time when Turkey has openly supported Pakistan. In February this year, President Erdogan had said that the Kashmir issue should be resolved through dialogue between India and Pakistan, and also according to UN resolutions, keeping in mind the aspirations of the people of Kashmir. This had led to a lot of angry reactions from India, and the Ministry of External Affairs had said that Turkey's stand on Kashmir was incorrect, biased and unwarranted. To discuss the latest tensions due to Operation Sindoor, use of Turkish drones by Pakistan against India, we're now joined by Sanjay Bhattacharyya, former MEA Secretary, also our ambassador to Turkey as well. Ambassador Bhattacharyya, thank you very much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, we do have very old diplomatic and business relations with Turkey. Having said that, do you feel the kind of reactions that we have seen today about boycotting Turkish goods due to national security, cutting down of tourism, stopping bookings, is this warranted considering that Turkey's stand on Pakistan and Kashmir is something we've always known and objected to in the past as well?
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Parikshit. I think, the fact that Turkey has had a position which favors Pakistan rather than India is something that is not very well known in the public domain. And people have always thought that Turkey was perhaps a relatively friendly country. But I think this has changed very much in recent times. While in the past, when Turkey had secular governments, Turkey did follow a somewhat balanced approach towards India and Pakistan. And although Pakistan was the preferred partner, India was always the more dominant partner, particularly in terms of economic engagement. While the economic dominance of our partnership remains, and we do trade and investments are of a much higher scale than that Turkey has with Pakistan, the political understanding between Turkey and Pakistan has taken quantum leaps in the current regime of Erdogan. And his Islamist ideology has been adopted by Pakistan, which makes Pakistan a very important ally of Turkey. And therefore, we see Erdogan actually echoing the Pakistan line, sometimes even more fervently than Pakistan themselves. So if you look at the kind of comments that came from President Erdogan to Prime Minister Sharif immediately after the Pahalgam terrorist attack, in which he talked of the brotherly support for Pakistan. It was somewhat ill-timed. And then you see the Foreign Office statements, which talked of the Indian retaliatory strike of Operation Sindoor being condemnable. And so condemning that retaliatory strike was, I think, somewhat a little excessive. It was even more than what China did. And of course, it brought up the Kashmir issue. So the kind of angst that we have amongst our people, the public outrage, is not unexpected, particularly when we see drones coming from there as well.
Okay. So, Ambassador Bhattacharya, what would be your view in terms of what could this lead to in terms of disruption of diplomatic relations between the two nations? A lot is being considered. A lot is on the table. The trade is minuscule compared to some of India's biggest trading partners. What is at stake?
Well, our economic relations are not as small. Trade above $10 billion. I think the previous year it was about $13 billion. Investments are actually, the two-way investments are about $480 million. There's a huge technology component in this particular collaboration, and we are in a sense linked to supply chains. And so, and Turkey is very deeply invested in several of our key infrastructure projects, metros, tunneling, other construction activities. So Turkish companies do play a very important role in India's development path. I think for India at this point of time, and there are, of course, two parts of it. One is the public outrage, which I can understand, and I think they must do what they must do. But I think the other is the official response. And I think there is an official response that is necessary, and I think it should be based on very clear evaluation. We must keep in mind that we have a certain development priority. We are on our way to becoming a major global economy. And part of that is a technology collaboration in which Turkey is a partner. Remember, Turkey probably has a per capita income which is equivalent to that of a middle-income country. And so, it does have certain technologies that we could both benefit from. So I don't think, and besides, the other point that I wanted to make was Turkey is also a reasonable weight in its diplomatic imprint. So what we do should be based on careful evaluation. It should not be knee-jerk. We should not look through the lens of Pakistan. I think Turkey's problem has been, or Erdogan's problem has been, that he's been looking at India through the lens of Pakistan. We should not look at Turkey through the lens of Pakistan, but an independent position based on our national interest, our priorities, and I think we can craft out a certain response approach.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, you're right when you speak about the quantum of trade. We've got about 150. I was just giving an explainer to our viewers. 150 Indian companies, big listed firms such as Mahindra & Mahindra, Wipro, TAFE, all have presence. Tata Group, all of them have a presence in Turkey. If the situation between India and Turkey were to worsen, what could we lose, and how could Turkey react, retaliate, not just economically, but politically and diplomatically?
I think our economic relations are something that we should factor in very closely. If our economic relations are those that do have a connect with the kind of attack or connections that we have seen in the recent past, then I think we should consider whether we continue with that or not. But if it is an element in our national development exercise, our path towards economic growth, we should consider that more favorably. I think we have to take a very nuanced approach. The approach is not so much in terms of economics, because even if we were to stop all tourist traffic to Turkey, the impact that it would have on the Turkish economy would be very minimal. It would probably have a larger sentimental value about telling the Turks about how deeply we feel about it. But if you just look at it in pure terms of economics, that would be very minimal. I think what we need to do is twofold. First, I think we need to step up our diplomatic activity so that we make sure that the kind of statements that Turkey makes repeatedly about its problems with India and our position on Kashmir are blunted so that they don't have much effect. And I think a lot of that has already been achieved. There are very few buyers for the Turkish version of India's policy towards Kashmir or, India-Pakistan relations. I think the rest of the world really looks at it very differently. Along with that,
Ambassador Bhattacharya? Yeah, Ambassador Bhattacharya, one more question. I'd like to understand from you, if you were to explain an Indian viewer, where is the Turkish president actually coming from? Where is this support for Pakistan and Kashmir emerging from?
Right. I think the president of Turkey has a certain Islamist agenda, which he has advanced within the country. In his first half of his rule of over 20 years, in the first half, he actually focused on economic development. And Turkey became one of the rising stars in terms of economic growth and development. It probably has a per capita income which is over $15,000 today. And after that particular satisfaction level was achieved, he turned to another idea, which was of having greater influence of Islam in all aspects of life. And the AK Party has been an agency through which it has continued that. And of course, the religious institutions. Realizing that the friendship of the Arab states around him was not to be taken for granted. They were skeptical about Erdogan's visions of an Islamist agenda. He turned towards Southeast Asia, South Asia, Central Asia and Africa. And in this particular effort, Pakistan, which also has a very similar agenda, became a useful ally. And not just an ally, it became the springboard for Turkey's exercise of this projection. And so that drew a very deep connection. The second deep connection was the Turkish economy, as you know, in recent years had not been doing too well, but there was a shining star, which was the military-industrial complex. And in that military-industrial complex, which is very closely linked to the AK Party, the ruling party, they found new buyers in Pakistan. And so that set up a new relationship with the new elites on the two sides. And the third was a very strong personal chemistry that Erdogan enjoyed initially with Nawaz Sharif and of course, later with Imran. And that has been also a very strong factor. But I think essentially what happened was he found it more convenient to speak Pakistan's line and Pakistan's words in its approach towards India, something that wasn't the Turkish position in the past, which was more balanced and more independent in its assessment of India and Pakistan.
Right, and it also probably plays in with the view that the Turkish president wants to play a bigger regional role, and taking this strong Islamic line, supporting countries like Pakistan, somehow helps that agenda as well. Ambassador Bhattacharya, always a pleasure to have you here on Global Eye. Thank you very much for joining us at a time when India-Turkey relations are at an all-time low. We're taking a short break, but coming up on the other side, President Trump wraps up his West Asia visit by signaling proximity and signing deals worth over $2 trillion for projects in areas that include defense, aviation, artificial intelligence. A special discussion with Talmiz Ahmed, former Indian ambassador to Saudi Arabia, when we're back.